Lewis Hamilton takes another great victory at the 2020 Hungarian Grand Prix, exceeding Michael Schumacher's record of 8 victories on a single circuit. He also equaled Michael's record of 7 poles at the Hungarian GP. Max Verstappen made a brilliant, beautiful and gigantic leap, starting from P7 and finishing at P2, 0.6 of a second faster than Bottas at P3. Bottas had sort of a flimsy race and he wasn't particularly happy about the start. He wasn't alone. With that said, welcome to the very first video of this YouTube channel and the first episode of Fuel with Prakhar. I'm your host, Prakhar, obviously, and I've created this, YouTube channel for the sole purpose of passion, passionately discussing about automotives, motorsports, technology, gaming, etc. By now you've realized this is not going to be a very mature one, so without wasting any of your time, let's dig right into the good stuff. But I don't mean drugs by that. Before we dig right into the race results and driver performances, let's first take a look at the standings. This race was interesting right from the start. Pre-race, Verstappen got caught up but was still able to get out and race and secure P2 because, Red Bull mechanics are magicians and you should never, ever underestimate an energy drink company's team. Kimi faced a penalty for wrongful positioning of his car at the start of the grid, which is kind of funny because he was plumb last. And Haas drivers started from the pit lane as they wanted to swap for the slicks instead of the inters. It was AlphaTauri's Kvyat next who went in for a tyre change from inters to slicks, and, to be fair to him, he was from the beginning saying that he wanted to pit and start from the pit lane, just like Haas drivers did, and they could have made a big decision there, but whatever. Right, now having that out of the way, let's dig right into the driver performances. Hamilton storms to victory yet again at the 2020 Hungarian Grand Prix, exceeding Michael Schumacher's record of 8 wins at a single GP. He also equaled Michael's record of 7 poles at Hungary, and it was his 90th pole. Yep. Now, I do believe that, everyone states that he has a great car and it's all set up from the start. Mercedes is a great team, so it's easy to get there. But I think there's a lot more credit that both Mercedes and Hamilton deserve that they don't really get. For starters, Hamilton didn't start with that great of a car. He started with McLaren, but he had to have done really, really well in order for McLaren at that point of time to pick Hamilton. And we all know how he performed in his rookie year, but who am I to judge?
I don't want to sound like a fanboy, even though to some I might have started to sound like one, so...
Moving on. At Hungary 2020, everyone was facing issues with their tires. The soft compounds were just not enough for that track because the track temperatures were inconsistent and too cool, and the front left was having blisters. And even it was really hard to manage the medium tires, let alone the soft ones. But Hamilton still had a smashing new lap record at qualifying of 1:13.447 and the fastest lap in the race, which was also a new track record, by the way. Secondly, I think Mercedes gets very little credit for having amazing strategies. Mercedes has been handling those tyre departments so well. If you look at some of the midfield teams like Ferrari or McLaren or Renault, none were able to manage the tyres as well as, Mercedes were able to. And obviously I'm going to give props to Red Bull because that was on a completely another level. But we'll get on to that later. It's about Mercedes and Hamilton for now. Oh no, I do think that we should discuss about it right now because, let's be honest, it was a tremendous race for Red Bull and Max Verstappen. I'd say Verstappen was the man of the race. Actually, no. That's a tie between Verstappen and Red Bull mechanics. That was a team to be, bowed for. I would totally bow for that team. Verstappen's pre-race crash must have left him feeling gutted, but the incredible team of RB mechanics switched the entire suspension system in around 18 minutes, just about ensuring him a start to the race. In fact, Hamilton had to ask twice that Verstappen was in the race. That's the biggest flex ever to me because I want to be so ahead in race that I'm not aware if the driver right behind me is in the race or not. The qualifying went pretty bad for Red Bull as Max could only secure P7 and Alex was made to look like a fool as per George Russell. I kind of believe that. I shouldn't have marked. I don't know why I did that. The midfield-like performance in quali meant they needed a hell of a start and Max had just that. Max quickly jumped to P2 as Bottas jumped the start and ruined the start completely. Max fought off a ferociously fast Bottas. All props to Bottas here. Max was on a set of hard compounds while Bottas was catching up on a set of mediums, very aggressively and very swiftly. Bottas was very close but had to box in to swap for a set of hard tyres at lap 50 of 70, and with a fresh set, Bottas could practically catch up with Max, who had been on the hards for almost 15 laps more by now. But, as we have come to know, Max really made it look easy with that Red Bull on wings while finishing second, 0.6 of a second ahead of Bottas. A lap more and Max and Bottas could have swapped places. Nevertheless, it was a phenomenal drive by Verstappen, who got the well-deserved driver of the day from his fans. That guy knows how to put on a real show. I mean it fully. And if the fans really had an option of choosing the mechanics for the driver of the day, I think they would have voted for them because I would have. Coming up on Valtteri Bottas, as I said, it was sort of a flimsy race for him. Bottas had jumped the start and later revealed that he reacted to some lights on the steering wheel and the race lights. Although I couldn't observe it from the cockpit cam, but hey, I'm no driver. I somehow feel like Hamilton gets a lot of hate for his excuses, which are technically just actual reasons most of the times. He says the underside of the car was bad and people call it an excuse. Days later, Mercedes revealed that the car did indeed have a floor issue. 2019 it was. Bottas, on the other hand, gets very less of that. And I'm not saying that he gives a lot of excuses, but I do think his sound more of like excuses than Hamilton's for real. Before all of you rain your comments, let me save your keyboard stomping in a $10 for a replacement keyboard. Yes, I don't know much. I'm just a passionate motorsport fan letting it out on YouTube. Enough of chit-chat. Bottas, as per me, was one of the best performers of this otherwise terrible race. Terrible for other drivers, I mean. As in Kimi Raikkonen getting a penalty for wrongful position when he started plumb last. That level of terrible. Bottas dropped to P7 from that abnormally gruesome start, but somehow managed to get back to the podium in his W11. If you look at the Bottas versus Leclerc, you will know exactly what I mean when I say he is one driver you don't want in your rearview mirror. Bottas caught up with Leclerc quite quickly, but that puddle of water ruined his attempt to overtake. He had really good control of his car. I mean, I almost thought his race was over, but then came a ferocious Bottas snatching P6 from Leclerc and not even flinching, like straight up business. He just wanted to reach P2 because, well, the gap between P1 and P2 was really far off, so he just wanted to reach for Max's place. To be fair, Leclerc was on a set of softs and that was a pretty horrendous choice for this track as the soft compound was having blisters on the front left due to the unusually cold track temperatures and the rain and the inconsistencies. Leclerc soon came in for a tyre change and swapped for hard tyres because he was facing extreme competition by Perez, Ricciardo and Sainz. And all these, by the way, finished in this exact order at P7, P8 and P9. It was amusing to watch Sainz and Ricciardo and finally being able to see Ricciardo not helpless like his old and Red Bull days. Obviously not as great as Red Bull, but still Renault did a pretty good job, I'd say. But as I've said before, Mercedes team gets very little credit for their strategies. Bottas didn't even have to pass that other Mercedes of Lance Stroll. Oh, I mean the other racing point of Lance Stroll when he was at P3. I mean, the team planned for Bottas an undercut and he just moved into P3. Which was great. He didn't have to waste his tyres. He didn't have to waste a lot of time in trying to catch up and play overtake with Lance Stroll. And there it was. So I still think they should be getting more. Yeah, they are a great team, but their developments are their developments. They're not stealing anyone else's. They're not doing it on the basis of stealing. It's just pure R&D, the whole strategy, everything about the team. And not all the teams do that. I mean, I hope you... Leclerc, in his usual fashion, had nothing of importance to add apart from that his tyres were rubbish. So I'd say good race for Bottas, although he didn't think so during post-race interview with Martin Brundle, and it was just sad to see him disappointed that way. But also kind of inspiring in a way that he's going to come back with like a really good comeback. I'm hoping that way, because it's not like Hamilton. Another thing about Hamilton is that when Hamilton is bogged down, he's not really losing any confidence or competitiveness. He comes back strong. Bottas has not been able to do that for a while now. He's just getting pressured a lot. He's underperforming because of that, and he loses confidence a lot faster. Maybe because he has so many eyes on him, because he's Hamilton's teammate. But the fact that he considers Hamilton not just his teammate, but one of his fiercest rivals, is going to be really important for everything in F1. Really. At P4 was Lance Stroll, who I think was the driver who got least credit for a rather spectacular job, and I think that was even from his own team. Mercedes played a beautiful undercut on Stroll, as I said before, so, Bottas didn't waste time at all. All in all, it was a pretty good race for the team and Stroll, but the intriguing controversy of Racing Point having last year's W10 is what has been putting people off. Seems like that car has more power than the driver, and so it is hard to congratulate or judge driver skills based on that. P5 saw a brilliant Alexander Albon making his way up from the 13th place due to that messy qualifying. Alex has been that young talent that seems to be ready for action and competition more. Yes, a young driver demands a strong and fast car and a good team, but most of the times it just happens to be overpowering. Take Leclerc for example. I think the biggest issue in Leclerc's performance is the limelight and the Ferrari brand name attached to him. It is very hard to sustain performance insanity when you're part of such a big team because of the added performance pressure and the number of eyes on you. Red Bull, with their driver programs and quick decision making, make sure that their drivers are not flying so high in order to choose performance out of them. Except Verstappen, of course, and I wouldn't blame you for giving Verstappen some extra love, owing to how he always manages to scoop out big numbers in each race. No matter where you put him on the grid, he is going to be there. Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel had a much better race than teammate Leclerc, although things just seem to be unfavourable for him generally. Lap 4, Vettel goes into the pits for a set of slicks, but is held up from the traffic coming into the pits behind him. An awful chaos of traffic for him when everyone decided to swap their inters for a set of slicks. Vettel in general gave really promising performance, but so many rumours surrounding him and people in general just waiting for him to announce retirement. I think Vettel sure had his mind under control to come up P6 in that SF1000, which I still think needs a lot of work done. And apparently, Matteo Binotto has admitted that their car really needs a lot of work if they really need to be able to perform to the level that they should be, because they are Scuderia Ferrari. In general, when you see that P5 finished 78 seconds after the leader, and everyone behind P5 was lapped by the leaders, you're sure to know what the chaos must have been like. The tyre strategies, congruence with the strategies, uncertainty of the reins, inconsistency of track temperatures all led to a pretty hectic race for everyone, especially the softs just not working out. If you watched the race, you know it was either very enjoyable for you or just very confusing. I mean, you missed anything after lap 35 and it was comparable to watching Inception from the middle without knowing what the story is. Ironically, it was Vettel who was lapped and was the one who could have been shown the blue flags. But credit must be given to McLaren. The type of performance they've shown so far has put Lando Norris fourth in the championship table, a position some thought was unachievable for McLaren in almost the next 3 years. I mean, Lando did admit that it was his fault this time and he let the team down, but I think that Lando did a pretty good job. He did all that he could, apart from certain mistakes that he made. It was a good start. The whole team is just seeming to bind up. As Lando Norris just told after the qualifying that they were now back to earth, they were now back to reality of where the team was, I think he's taking too hard on himself. But that cute little boy is helping out, just removing all the parts, unsettling the car so that it can be loaded again for the next race. I think that's a really good driver. Really hard to find too. Talking of good drivers, Carlos Sainz zoomed past so many places with a brilliant start and ended at P9. He was right behind the man replacing him next year at McLaren, Daniel Ricciardo. It was a good drive, but all eyes were on Lando, who fought off a fierce scarlet-red Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Norris was having none of that immense power advantage of the Ferrari, and he gave some real competition to Leclerc. If I'm honest, Leclerc must be a bit stunned by the performance because everyone knows that McLaren will have a Mercedes engine from next year. Moreover, Sainz's performance could very well make Leclerc quite insecure as his teammate for next year. It is painful to watch Leclerc finishing so far off behind at P13 that it almost seemed like Ferrari was limping back to the finish. After that pathetic stunt at the Styrian GP where Leclerc took out both the Ferraris in the beginning, it does seem like Ferrari couldn't get the stats of their upgrades from that race and had to experiment them on this one, which just made things worse. Seriously, Magnussen finishing before Leclerc points out to how good of a drive Magnussen had, how good of a strategy they must have had, and how bad of a rapport Ferrari is facing currently. Team strategies play a huge role in all the races, and Ferrari seems to be having issues building a camaraderie between the team. Whatever it is, we are hoping for a hard-to-imagine but much better comeback. Ferrari team boss Matteo Binotto had claimed that their car was ruined by the engine regulations compliance. But in typical Wolff fashion, Mercedes team boss thwarted this theory, stating that there is nothing ambiguous about engine regulations and that the clear directives were required to be followed. Simple. I kind of agree with Mr. Wolff here, and it's not because he speaks like the Terminator. But, well, Ferrari has also admitted to one more thing. Matteo Binotto has, that yes, their car still needs a lot of improvements for them to be able to perform better and to the levels of a Ferrari name. So folks, that was it for this episode. I just wanted to concisely let my fellow motorsports fans know what happened in the 2020 Hungarian Grand Prix from a fan's perspective, because it was a total chaotic race. I'll join you soon. Next time you'll get to hear me soon in the next video if you subscribe to me. Only then I'm going to come into your feed, but I'm not going to shove that down your throat. Subscribe. Yeah, that's it. So I'll join you in the next one. Oh, and spread peace and love, people. We need that. We need in our times. Peace in our time.